Hello and welcome to the Movie Therapy channel. We are Jim and Sam, and this is the show where we like to give you our rating first and then talk about the things we did not like about the movie we just saw. Today's movie is Crawl. Did you guys see it? What did you think? Because we are letting you know in 3, 2, 1. Wait for it.
Really?
I did like it.
See it.
What I will say is that if you're someone that wants to go to the movies to see some gnarly alligator kills, this is the movie for you. If you are not interested in going to the movies to see some gnarly alligator kills, I don't think this is the movie for you. Okay, so Crawl. Let's start with the things that we liked about this movie. I'll start with the fact that I like that this film knew what it was and it wasn't ashamed of it. I also was not prepared for how brutal this movie ended up being. There are some, like I said in the beginning, there are some gnarly alligator kills in this movie that I was not prepared to actually see. And it caught me off guard when it started happening. I was like, oh, damn, they're doing that.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely have to say that I liked this a lot better than I thought I was going to. I wasn't really excited to go see this movie at all, but the second half of the film brought it together from a passage to see it. Because at first, I was not about it, but once they got into all the action sequences, and they're gnarly, but they're good to watch. It's interesting.
It gets intense.
It does.
They ratchet up the tension. It's one of those movies where it's like the characters find themselves in this insane predicament. So it's a father and daughter that are in a hurricane. They're stuck in the basement of their house.
Right. And
they're stuck in the basement of the house because 2 alligators have found their way into the basement where the dad was working on the house, and they have now blocked their way out. So now in this hurricane, they need to find a way out of the house, but they can't because the alligators are in the way, and the alligators are pretty much stopping everyone that could give them help. And so every time something goes wrong, it goes really wrong. And the movie is just a continual buildup of stuff just going wrong. One thing after the other. Just keeps on getting worse and worse and worse for the situation that our characters are in. And they do a pretty good job of keeping the tension really, really tight. The film is, I would say, it's unpredictable, but also kind of predictable at times. I like the unpredictability of it. The predictability of it didn't really bother me. I think it might bother some people. But there's some, like, if you're in tune with horror movies and the way they move cameras and the way they leave dead space, and some you're like, oh, something's going to happen on this side of the screen, and something then happens on that side of the screen.
I mean, I think it just kind of goes with the kind of movie that it was.
Yeah.
I don't think that was anything that, I mean, it was kind of expected in going into that film.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think some people might find an issue. I didn't have an issue with it. Again, I think it's just one of those movies. It knows what it is, and it did not shy away from it. It's both intense. There's some jump scares in it, so there are some loud bangs with some stuff jumping out of the shadows. It is funny at times. And one of the things I actually liked the most about the movie is that it took the premise. It was kind of silly with the premise a little bit, but it respected the main characters enough to get you, or to allow you to root for the characters to get out of their predicament. Because sometimes in these movies that really don't take themselves that seriously, like one of those ones, and when I say like movies that knows, like they know what they are, they're films that they're not trying to be the next Jaws.
Right.
You know, they know making this movie that a movie about alligators that overrun a town in a hurricane isn't going to be competing with Jaws. So they're not interested in being the next Jaws. They're just interested in entertaining you and for you having a good time.
Yeah.
So one of the things I liked is that in the midst of all this, of being, with some of the tongue-in-cheek stuff, they take the main characters seriously enough to allow you to root for them. There's like some movies you see where you're like, man, can this person in this movie just die already? I
think that helped that there wasn't a lot of cast members. There wasn't. I think in movies like that where you're like, oh, I want this character to die, that's because there's like almost too many characters, and then they have the whole slew of characters. You have the jock, you have the damsel, you have the girl, you have, the smart guy, and then at that time you're just like annoyed of half of them anyways. So I think keeping it to 2 people was really smart. Yeah.
So I did like that. Now I think I'm just ready to move on to the favorite scenes. So Sam, did you have a favorite scene?
I did. I liked the scene where they were trying to get the boat, and then the rain stopped.
The eye of the hurricane.
The eye of the hurricane, and then right as they got the boat, the water just like rushed in, and that's kind of was the turning point of the whole film for me, where I started to like it a lot more.
Yeah,
which is kind of
that's
near
again
the
one of those
end.
points where one of those things where it's like, oh, you think it's going to get better, then it just gets worse.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my personal favorite scene is the looter scene.
Yeah,
It's the
I
scene.
forgot about that. Yeah,
It's both brutal, but yeah, it's tongue-in-cheek brutal. That is one of those moments where they're having fun with the film. It's like the moment in the film where you realize, like, okay, these people know the film that they're making. They're going to have fun with this. And you just be here for a good time. It happens early enough in the film where it's like, oh, okay, cool. I know what kind of film I'm in for. Let's go for the ride. And that whole sequence was both terrifying, funny, and it made the situation that much more dire. So it accomplished a couple of things within that scene. One of the reasons why it's a standout scene in the film for me. So now let's move on to the things that we didn't like. I will go ahead and start this segment. My biggest issue with the film is that while I did get invested in the characters, the dialogue's not great. Especially in the beginning before like the craziness starts to happen. The dialogue is very stiff. It's unnatural. It's probably, with movies like this, it's the reason why it's never, you're probably never going to compete with the Jaws, because the thing that stands out with Jaws is the characters, is the dialogue. Mm-hmm. And that, they're not even trying to become close to what that is. And it kind of sticks out until what everyone that is making this film is interested in doing actually starts to happen, which is the alligator terrorizing people scenes. So until we get there, the actors are doing a fine job with what they're doing, but just the stuff that they're given to say, it's just not that interesting. It's a little hokey. Yeah, it's kind of odd. Just because it feels unnatural. Mm-hmm. So that's probably my biggest dislike. The other one, it does take a little while for it to get going, but I didn't so much have a problem with that. It is a short film, but they do probably take 20 to 30 minutes before the craziness actually starts to happen. Maybe they could have sped that up, but I was okay with it. So what are some things that you didn't like?
To be honest, one of my biggest things was what you were saying, like with the choppy dialogue. It was a little weird, but to be honest, I didn't need that much flashbacks.
Okay.
Like the flashbacks I thought were a little awkward. It was too much. I kind of got it after a while, and it just kind of took away from what they were actually trying to accomplish in the film, and it was like a little too much for me.
Okay.
Like it was fine, but after a while it just kept going back to the flashbacks, and like at that point I was like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, the other thing that bothered me a little bit was that I think they're having maybe a little bit too much fun with the gators grabbing people and then people getting away from the gators. There's probably a good handful of times where a gator bites someone and then they get away from the gator.
Yeah, but
only once did I actually believe that they would actually get away from that predicament.
I think that happened, right, but I think that is also because there were only really two main characters.
Yeah. I'm not going to give away like who it is that gets bit and stuff, but it does happen a good number of times in the film. And it's just like, at some point, it's a little much for me.
Like, it goes with that type of film it is. I mean, I think that's kind of like, they're going to get away. They have to get away because it's really only two characters.
Yeah, maybe twice when it happens, I actually was like, okay, I can believe that they got away from that bite. But at some point, it just got to be like a little much where it's like, all right, like they'd be dead right here.
Well,
especially when it happens like
they would not have gotten out of that house to begin with. But.
Especially when it happens when they're underwater, it's like the alligator you would 100% be dead. So that is the other issue that I have with the film. But again, it didn't ruin the film, but it's just something that would sort of hindered my suspension of disbelief. Mm-hmm. I do have a certain level of suspension of disbelief I can have with this. And they just took it a little far.
Sure.
So that's it for me.
That's it for me.
All right. That is it for us. What did you think of Crawl? If you saw it, let us know. See it, wait for it, or pass it. And I think the next movie we got is The Lion King next Thursday. Mixed for the critics right now. Super interested to see that film. Because I do have some issues with the trailers. When I do see the trailers, I'm like, oh, this might look funky. And some of the reactions I have been seeing are kind of confirming the things that I was worried about going into The Lion King. So I'm super fascinated to see it. I actually can't wait. Next Thursday. So we'll have a review next Friday for that. So That's it for us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you next time, guys.